Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really massive undertaking, transforming how an entire business operates with a new Enterprise Resource Planning, or ERP system. Look, this is the kind of project that can literally make or break a company. So, let's get into the blueprint for doing it right.
Okay, I know it sounds like the start of a bad joke, right? But the answer is actually chaos. Specifically, it's the kind of chaos that erupts when a company's own internal processes just aren't clearly understood or managed. And that right there is the core problem that a well-executed ERP project is designed to solve. So we're going to break down exactly how.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into why you need a map in the first place. Then, we'll look at the tools you use to actually draw that map. From there, we'll see how the map guides you toward real improvements before we walk through the formal project itself. And we are going to finish with what is probably the most critical ingredient for success. And trust me, it's not what you think.
All right, so to kick things off, why is all this process mapping so darn important? Well, it's because most companies, before they get an ERP system, are dealing with a really serious communication breakdown.
This is the classic silo problem. Marketing has its data, manufacturing has its own, and sales, they have a completely different set, and none of them talk to each other. That means nobody has a single, reliable source of truth. And that just creates these huge inefficiencies and forces people to make big decisions basically in the dark.
And this quote just shows the real-world cost perfectly. In this example, the manufacturing manager is literally guessing what to produce because they can't see the actual sales data. And if you guess wrong, you either have a warehouse full of products nobody wants, or you've got a mob of angry customers with orders you can't fill. Either way, it's incredibly expensive.
Okay, so to fix the problem like that, you first have to be able to see it clearly. You need a map of how your business currently works. Warts and all. And that's where process modeling tools come in. They let you create what's called an as-is model. So the most basic tool here is a good old-fashioned flowchart, or a process map. The goal isn't to design the future just yet. It's to get everybody in the same room to agree on a single picture of how things actually work today. You'd be amazed. Just doing that one thing often uncovers some major misunderstandings.
And the real beauty of it is its simplicity. It uses this standard, very limited set of symbols for things like operations, decisions, and the start and end points. This keeps the focus where it should be, on the process itself, not on learning some kind of complicated new language.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. What you're looking at is a special type of flowchart called a swim lane flowchart. By organizing all the steps into columns for each person or department, you've got the salesperson, the manager, the clerk. You can see in a split second who is responsible for what. And more importantly, you see exactly where the handoffs and potential bottlenecks are.
Okay, now let's look at a more specialized tool. This is an event process chain, or an EPC diagram. Now this is really cool because it's designed to perfectly match the internal logic of major ERP software like SAP. And it does that by using a really simple language with just two symbols: events, which are like a status update, and functions, which are the actions that actually cause a change.
And this slide shows that core logic in action. It always follows this strict sequence. An event happens, like expense incurred. That event triggers a function, like prepare expense report, which in turn creates a new event, like expense report completed. It's this very clean, very logical cause and effects model. And these diagrams can get even more powerful. You can start layering on more detail. So here, you see we're adding the specific data being used, the unimproved expense report, and the actual people involved, like the salesperson. This builds a much richer picture. You're not just seeing the what, you're seeing the who and the with what information.
Okay, so once you have this really accurate map of your current process, what's next? Well, the next step is to use it to figure out what actually needs to be improved. Because here's the thing, you never, ever want to just automate a bad process.
And this is absolutely a crucial point. The main way to do this is something called value analysis. You look at every single step on your map and you ask a simple question. What kind of value does this step add? Is it real value, something the customer actually cares about and would pay for? Is it business value, stuff that helps the company run? Or does it add no value at all and should just be eliminated?
This whole framework forces you to challenge the status quo, to ask those simple, tough questions. Like, why do we need 3 different signatures for this? Why are we making 5 copies of that form? And why on earth are we entering the same customer address into 3 different systems? These are the kinds of things that add costs and complexity, but absolutely zero real value. All right, so now we connect these ideas of mapping and improving to the absolutely massive project of actually implementing the new ERP system. This is not something you can just wing. It demands a structured, phase-by-phase approach. Now, to manage all this complexity, vendors provide really detailed guides. What you're seeing here is a glimpse of SAP's Solution Manager, which includes a whole implementation roadmap. It's basically the playbook, designed to break the entire project down into manageable chunks so that critical steps don't get missed.
And the journey follows 5 key phases. It starts with project preparation. That's where you define your scope to avoid that dreaded scope creep. Then comes the business blueprint, where all that process mapping turns into formal requirements. After that is realization. This is where the rubber meets the road and you're actually building the system. That's followed by final preparation for all the testing and training, and then finally, the big moment, go live and support.
Now, to manage all the technical work of configuring the software and writing code safely, there's a best practice approach called the 3-system landscape. This means you don't just have one version of the software running, you actually have 3 separate identical systems.
Think of it like a publishing workflow. The dev system, that's your workshop. That's where developers are configuring things and writing code. Once that's done, you move it over to the QAS system for some really rigorous testing. And only after it passes every single test does it finally get transported to the prod system, the live environment that the entire company depends on. This process is what prevents a tiny change from accidentally breaking the whole company.
So, we've covered the maps, the analysis, the roadmap, the technology, but the single most important factor for success has nothing to do with software at all. It's all about people.
This is such a powerful quote from Nestle's CIO after a really tough implementation. It just gets right to the heart of the matter. An ERP project isn't an IT project. It's a change project. You are fundamentally changing how people do their jobs, and that is a massive human challenge you just can't ignore. And this is exactly why a discipline called Organizational Change Management, or OCM, is so absolutely critical. Its entire focus is on the human side of all this change. The goal is to proactively manage people's reactions, address their concerns, and help them see the new system as an opportunity to make their work better, not as some kind of threat.
So, the most important thing to take away from all of this really comes down to a final question. Are you just focused on building a piece of technology, or are you focused on building up the people who will actually use it? Because at the end of the day, the most elegant process map and the most sophisticated software in the world are completely worthless if the people who have to use it every single day resist it. True transformation is always and ultimately people-powered.